you just make a record of who all is present.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like me to call it out or just?
All right. I that seems unnecessary, actually, to call it out. I think we're
okay.
Visual verification.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So the first thing we have on our agenda, and thanks everybody for joining in, and I think we'll have our most substantive conversation about the upcoming schedule. But the first thing on the agenda is the discussion of policy about intellectual property. And what happened, you will remember, is that we agreed to let the National Museum of the American Indian use the photograph and representation of Kokakowski in there for whatever purpose. And so an agreement was reached and signed with them. And we did it free of charge on the basis that this was a museum open to public, that it served a public purpose, and so on. But at the time, the issue was raised about, well, what if it's a commercial entity that would want to use an image? And in that case, would we want to charge for it? So I'm not trying for us to rewrite the intellectual property agreement at this point. It's just the policy question that is before us, I think, of whether we should charge a commercial entity if they wanted to use it, and what that would entail. So Holly, you probably know the most about this. Do you have anything to add?
I don't know that I have another example for the state that has such a sculpture and how that image was potentially used someplace else. Obviously, all these areas are open to the public, and it would be difficult to actually control. But I think we were trying to draw a bright line, so to speak, between truly educational use and historical documentation versus if there was any potential commercial application. I don't know if we just would suggest having a policy for the what ifs in case someone decides to attempt to use the image commercially, and there would be something to fall back on if the commission didn't feel comfortable for how it was being used. If this is, be honest, new territory for me as well, that I'd be happy to do some more research for the commission for additional recommendations. But that was just a question that came out as we were working the document with the Office of Attorney General and thinking through different scenarios and whether there needed to be an overall policy.
Okay. So Jacqueline, do you have any wisdom on this issue?
Well, I mean, I'm in a little bit of the same boat as Holly in that, this doesn't come up often. My inclination, I do think we should be concerned about having an out for just what Holly said. If we're not comfortable with a proposed use, I think we would want to have something in place, a policy perhaps ahead of time that allows us to sort of make that call. As far as charging for use, it seems to me that would make sense. When you're talking about a corporate, a for-profit entity using an image, but that's just a gut reaction. I don't know what others think about that, and I don't know that I have any legal grounds for that. It just seems to make sense to me.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, Sandy, what about the library? Do y'all have anything similar?
We do have, we require permission if someone is using something, but if it's a not-for-profit or educational, we often just waive any charges. Where if it's commercial, we do have a reproduction fee, and then we often will give them a sort of one-time use. So they specify what it's for, and then we'll give them a one-time use. I'm happy to dig that document up for you. I don't know that it's written out in a policy necessarily, but let me check on that. But yeah, we do distinguish between the two, and we do charge a fee for commercial use.
I know that images of storming a redat, we get not as many requests recently, but we used to get lots of requests for that. And if it was educational, we advise y'all not to charge them since y'all have the image. But I kind of like the policy you just mentioned, myself and Jacqueline. It's better to have it in place than trying to catch up.
I agree. And I like the sort of one use. I like it being limited to that one use, and whether that's by virtue of the form they fill out when they ask, or, and it may be both. You know, it may be they fill out the form, but we have a policy that reflects what they're signing off on.
I'll be happy to work with, excuse me, ma'am. I'll be happy to work with Dr. Treadway and try to develop a document or agreement that could be used by the commission then, if that is your choice.
Yeah, that sounds good. That's what I was thinking, that we probably need to do a little research and work on this before we make the final decision. But it does sound like we're interested in distinguishing between those two kinds of uses and being prepared then when the time comes. And maybe it'll never come. So, but
it'll come.
We can at least try to be ahead of things.
Well, you know, several years ago, we tried to not copyright whatever we were trying to do under legislation, the Udon statute. And I'm trying to remember who has that now. Reed and Barton, maybe. I'd have to go dig all that stuff up. But they came down on us with a sledgehammer because they said they own the image. We don't own the image. And they were going to sue us if we pass the legislation. And see, the state, when that was done, no one thought about stuff like this. And nothing had been done. And I think the first company that made the replicas got bought by another company. And so it was a long line of who really owned the image. And
didn't we? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Didn't we deal with that in the contracting on this one, such that?
I don't remember.
I think you wisely raised that back then, and I thought our contracting addressed that very issue because and says that we own it.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's true. Or did we get a release or something from? Who was the first guy? Was it John?
Yeah, we bought him out.
Yes.
Right. I think it was during that period that we addressed all of that.
Right.
There is a section in the agreement with Studio Ice that indicates that you have control of the IP related to the sculptures. Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Trying to share my intellectual property.
Which is good. I think it was because of that experience that you'd had on the other one that we were mindful of that.
And that was a big issue with the Barbara Johns statue too, because the sculptor did not want to release it because he was he wanted his family to have it for financial reasons. And I don't know what ended up on that.
All right. Well, let's proceed along those lines. Holly, thank you for agreeing to take that on and work with others so we're prepared when the time comes. It does sound like we're interested in making that differentiation. Okay, then Holly gets to come up and talk to us again on the problem with the statues and the finish and what the maintenance issues are.
I don't know how many of the members had an opportunity to be on Capitol Square recently, but if you've walked through the monument, I think perhaps some may be surprised at some of the environmental wear that has occurred on some of the sculptures. I think tends to be weather oriented based on the angle that it seems to be most affected. I believe the commission anticipated a lot of touching and pictures and so forth with the sculptures, but this does appear to be perhaps weather oriented. So we've had B.R. Howard, who is under contract with the Commonwealth, to submit a proposal for what would be normally the standard, I guess, conservation work that would be required in maintaining sculptures. And he's also going to look at the rest of the monument itself, the granite and the glass and so forth too. And we'll schedule the work to be done this summer. The conversations have been in coordination with Studio Ice in making sure that it is also acceptable to them, since it is a work in progress, and that the Howard work will match up with the newer Foundry work that's in process right now too. We don't have a specific date as of yet. B.R. Howard is actually helping with some other projects of the Commonwealth right now, but we anticipate with summer weather being an optimum time, hopefully maybe later July, August would be the time frame that he could possibly be on site. But as we get those dates firmed up, we'll share that with the commission.
Yeah, so something of a disappointment to have them deteriorate so quickly.
Well, and I guess I have a question about that. Is that, I mean, I'm sure my question is stupid, but is it a flaw? Thank you, Susan. Is it a flaw in the material itself? I mean, it's weather would have been anticipated by the foundry and the sculptor, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Is there a design defect?
Right.
I don't know that I can say that on behalf. I would rely, I think, on Mr. Howard as he actually does the work on the sculptures to perhaps better identify what had occurred. But the foundry has been involved in the conversations with Studio Ice as well, so that if there's any adjustments, I guess, in the process that need to occur, they can make that with the next grouping that will be installed. So I was pleased to see that both Ivan and Brian Howard were communicating back and forth and trying to coordinate the work that will be done on site.
Usually they turn green,
Mm-hmm.
but now that we have a more regular scheduled cleaning and whatever else they do to them, the others are doing fine. But I've never seen the others fade, because that's really what it looks. It looks like the patina faded.
Which
just
I believe
feels
is actually wax. I don't know if it's a different consistency of wax that may be needed because of the intense, Richmond heat right there on the hill. But I think that's what really causes that fading look, from what I'm learning.
And what did Ivan have? I mean, has he had that happen before? What?
I don't have that answer. I would have to ask him for additional details that I could share.
It seems like it's been such a short time for that sort of fading or weathering to happen.
Yes,
Yeah,
it does. And so I think it will be important to get Mr. Howard's assessment of what the problem is, and
Right.
I know they've done a lot of outdoor sculptures. I'm sure they have. So it does seem surprising that this, I don't think the weather in Richmond is that different.
Right. No.
I don't know. At any rate, I thought it was important for everybody to know about that, know what was going on. And Holly, I guess we'll wait till we get a little more analysis of the situation for Mr. Howard, but I'm glad that you have him working on it. And
Yes.
it does need to be corrected. And then hopefully whatever helps us avoid that in the future.
Yes, ma'am. We'll try to avoid that, obviously, and then also send additional details to the commission as we learn and the schedule of when the work will actually occur.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
I have a question. So is that additional cost, maintenance cost, is that accounted for within our budget? Like, do we have money for that, or is that borne by the Commonwealth? Like, is that just upkeep of Capitol Square? If that's in
At
Susan's
this
bucket.
point, it is the upkeep of Capitol Square is how
Okay.
it is being managed at this moment.
Excellent.
Wouldn't if there was a problem with the finish, wouldn't the foundry also have to maybe cover some of that cost?
That may be something worth exploring if we can identify that is the situation.
Okay.
Good point.
And also look at the agreement and see what the warranty was.
Right.
Yes, I believe, and I need to refresh my memory, there was the recommended maintenance plan that they do talk about, I think, yearly. But again, I think everyone was a little surprised that this year seemed to go by very quickly and a little more wear than anticipated.
Yeah. All right. Well, first part of that will be to find out what's causing it, and then go from there. Okay. Sounds good. Well, then I had Lindley send you the schedule of related to the statues, and I guess somehow in my head I had them all coming in June, and obviously that is not the case. So there's a little more time involved in this whole process than I had realized before. So I guess that the Martha Washington and Clementina Rind will be done this summer, end of June or July. But then the other two aren't going to be complete till the end of the year, maybe January of next year. So they suggest a delivery schedule that would have all four coming at once. And then it says an alternative would be to have Martha and Clementina installed this summer and not wait until all four of them are done. So I wanted to get a sense of how people felt about that.
So I hate to bring up an unpleasant topic, but I wasn't sure. I didn't know, how did we end up on the Martha issue? So it's like Martha definitely going in?
Yes, I think that's where we are.
Okay. And I actually, when Holly mentioned, I actually have been, I visited maybe a month ago. And it's very tight. I mean, I just can't imagine where we're going to place. I mean, I know we have a diagram, but do you all agree with that? I mean, I just feel like I don't think we should. I mean, I think it's perfect the way it is. I think if you add one more in there, it's no longer perfect. It's going to be tight. That's just my personal, like, the more that I go through, I was like, yeah, this is great. I mean, I know we're getting them, but do y'all think it's going to fit? They're going to fit?
Yeah, I think they are.
You think so?
I do.
And not be tight, Susan? Not be like,
Well, Clementina and Martha will be seated, away from, is it Ann Layton? I can't think of her name right now. Anyway, I think, because I've been down there looking too, but I think it's going to work because Sarah Boyd and Maggie Walker are closer to the sundial. They're not like right out in the middle. And Clementina and Martha are closer to the sundial. They're not like right out in the middle. And Sarah Boyd and Maggie Walker are closer to the sundial. They're not like right out in the middle. And Clementina and Martha are closer to the sundial. They're not like right out in the middle. But yeah, I think they'll fit. My question would be, so are we going to pay 2 installation costs, or should we wait and just have them all done at one time and only pay 1 installation cost?
That seems to make a lot of sense to me. I think there are lots of reasons pointing toward putting 4 in at once instead of piecemeal.
Will the foundry store the 2 that would be ready? And would there be a cost for that? I'm fine doing it either way, but that, there might be a cost for storing them. I don't know.
I think we'd have to find out.
Yeah.
And also ask DGS if there's a place they could store them. Poor
I think
Charlie.
that's a good point. And what perhaps in the assessment of what's happening with the others, there may need to be an assessment of, what is that? Can anyone tell how that's going to affect the finish on the 2 that are done versus, that would be done and in storage while waiting on the others?
So if I may answer that, DGS would certainly assist with finding storage locations if we needed to prior to the maybe full group installation later. I also just wanted to share the number of construction projects that are occurring around Capitol Square right now, and then the inauguration stadium seating will be built on Capitol Square in front of the Capitol also. So just so that you're anticipating if there was going to be another event with the installation, there's just a lot of activity on Capitol Square that may detract from the experience until some of that settles down.
So the scaffolding will start going in, I think it's the 1st of October.
Yes, ma'am.
And then they are working on the tunnel from the GAB to the Capitol right up into the inauguration. So that's another major construction project going on right now. I think the lighting and the other part, that the cameras, that will be done, but still, particularly the tunnel and the scaffolding construction it's a huge impact. So I would say wait till the end of the year.
Yeah, and that almost sounds like that at that point we might have to let it go a bit longer.
By that point, the GAB will pretty much be finished as far as construction on the outside. It'll be interior work.
Okay.
And I would think Old City Hall should be just about finished by then. And the scaffolding will be gone. It takes them about a month to take the scaffolding down. They will then start on the tunnel coming into the square. But that would be the only major project at that point. And also right now, we have the replacement of the skylight and the extension, which will go through the end of August.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it is absolute chaos on Capitol Square right now.
Okay. So that sounds like we're inclined to wait until all 4 of them are ready and do 1 installation. Is there agreement on that?
I think so.
Okay. And then as the time gets closer, we can set the time for the actual work to be done according to the situation.
And I don't think we were planning another event. We were just planning to install. Is that correct?
That's
Please.
correct. Yeah. That's my thought, that we went ahead and had the dedications decided then. We didn't have to wait till the end to do it. And I was just thinking they would just get installed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I don't see needing to have a big event, and we can do an announcement and press releases and things like that. But I don't think we'll spare you another event. All right. Well, that's fine.
Mary Margaret, I have a question about the name plates. Are we going to have any kind of signage or name? Because lots of folks have asked me about that.
Yeah, so we talked about doing nameplates at one time, and did we not ever resolve that, or who knows?
There is DGS did a very nice sign on the west side of the monument indicating the names of the women. We did talk about nameplates, and Holly, I know Joe and I talked about it. And he said, DGS would do whatever we want to do. We are also going through planning for a new visitors experience at the Capitol, and that includes exterior signage, which would include all the monuments so that they would be consistent and look the same, and also interior signage for the Capitol. So, I mean, right now, and then, of course, the whatever site we call it, they will identify all the monuments and who the women are on each one, and like the equestrian statue, Washington, who those men are, and the Barbara Johns. But then the signage will be consistent, and we can tell all the artists that they're all being treated the same, and we can get these identification items up. So we are moving forward with that. It's not going to be tomorrow, Lisa.
That's fine. Well, if there's a cost for that, is that already accounted for our monument, for the signage?
That would be part of the visitor experience expense, because it's part of the educational component.
Okay. Right. I was out at an event and I saw Lissy the other day, and she told me to tell the commission that she would be happy to pay for it if we have to do signage, that she would like to pay for that. So I said,
nice of her.
I said, can I tape you with my telephone?
Let's see what else we can get her to pay for.
I know, but she told me to let you all know. Okay.
Well, that was very nice of her indeed. But there is, people do seem to want to have them named. But Susan, do you think that means that each one will get a nameplate at some point?
That's what Joe and I discussed, and we did look at where the nameplates would go. And Holly, I don't know if it ever bubbled up to Studio Ice, because we were going to ask them their recommendation, but they would just be small bronze plaques that have the name on them.
Right.
And then the app would go into more detail about each woman and her history and why she was chosen. And then that would also go to the wall, and the names on the wall, who these people were and why they were selected for the wall.
Okay, that's great. Holly?
Excuse me. I believe the information was shared with Studio Ice, and I believe the timing would be beneficial if the thought is to proceed with installing the nameplates, is to maybe do it when the last grouping of sculptures are installed. So then the placement of the nameplates could be decided by Studio Ice for the right perspective, and that they would have a voice, I'll say, and how it should be actually attached to the plaza, so that there's no issues with that.
One thing that might help right now is the sign that's on the west entrance be also put on the east entrance. to the monument. And then when we get the new exterior signs, we could put one on either side. But that might help, Lisa, with what you were discussing.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds like, Lisa, did you have something else?
No, that was it.
Okay. So that sounds like a work in progress and that it will happen. And we're very thankful for the sign that is there because that helps very much to identify people. But
Paris did a nice job on that.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. That sounds good. Colleen, I was wondering if the educational program is going to be so important to this. Do you want to give us a quick review of what's going on with that and the fundraising for it? I'm sorry, I didn't give you a heads up.
Oh, that's okay. It's actually a very timely question. Craig and I have scheduled a meeting with the clerks and the House and Senate IT for next week. And we're going to do a Zoom call. The CNG is still in the process of designing the website and is very close to, I think it's about, Craig said it's about maybe 75% done, 80% done. And right now, they need some guidance from the clerks as to some specifics pertaining to the website. And so once they have that information, I think, depending on the responses, maybe that would be wrapped up by early fall, the design phase of it. Mm-hmm. And so that piece is paid for. The money's been raised. It's in the checking account for the design piece of it. As far as the building of the website, pre-pandemic, we talked about, or the clerks graciously offered to have the House and Senate IT perhaps build that website. However, with the pandemic and just the increasing need for Zoom and as busy as the General Assembly has been this past year, we are looking to CNG. They had initially submitted a proposal to build it, and they are currently updating that. So it may be that we will do some additional fundraising to pay for CNG to actually build that website and the app. Mm-hmm. So we should know more, I would say, in the coming month or so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. Well, it's nice to know it's coming along. And
yes.
Yeah.
I can just build on that because the Capitol Visitor Experience is, three parts. It's the interior signage, exterior, and the website. So for the signage, Craig has a final design that I think he's sending to the clerks today for feedback. He's been working very closely with Holly and DGS on that exterior signage. And I believe once it is signed off, then DGS will take the proposal, the construction documents, and issue an RFP, and they will take care of selecting that vendor to construct that signage. And obviously will have to be timed with all the construction and the inauguration and such, but that project is, the exterior signage is well on its way.
Great. Good. Thank you. Well, this has been great to see everybody, and it's been a long time since we caught up with one another, and we'll have a few more meetings, I'm sure, coming up as we get to these different stages of the project. But anything else anybody wants to mention? All right. Well, thank you very much for guidance. Good to see you virtually, and hope we can do it in person soon.
Good to see all of you.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you, Bentley.
Yes, ma'am.